Okay, hopefully this will work. Should be able to see me and hear me again. All right, so we are on continuing. We had a bit of a break last week. I was away. We are continuing now Masechet Makkot, Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, and we are up to the next Mishnah. So you remember the previous Mishnayot. This Perek, third Perek, Elohein Elokin, is dealing with, as the name of the Masechet suggests, Makkot. Dealing with Makkot, different lavim, different prohibitions, Isurei Torah, which one would get Makkot. As we've already discussed many times throughout the Shiurim, the general punishment for when you have a lav, when you have a mitzvat lo taseh, barring exceptions or specific reasons, the punishment for that would be Makkot. So the Mishnayot go through and give us specific examples of certain Isurim for which one would get Makkot. Rashi, and then at the beginning of the Perek, told us that all of these that are listed have a certain chidush, have a certain element in them which you may not have known. But okay, so we go through and we have a different list. Now we're moving on to completely new examples, which the Mishnah is going to go through. Which one would get Makkot? So says the Mishnah, we're about halfway down, but past halfway, the first of the wide lines on Daf Chaf Amud Aleph. So says the Mishnah, Kolach kalcha belosho, v'mekif b'at losho. Okay, so 4 different examples. These are all different isurim. Which one would get Malkut? The first one is somebody who literally pulls out his hairs, right? Pulls out one's hairs on your head as an expression. So it's done as an expression of sorrow, as an expression of mourning for the mate. This was something which was done in the ancient world. The Torah tells us not to do this. There should not be excessive sort of mourning. Person needs to understand that that's why at a funeral we say we accept the judgment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We understand the fact that this is not the be all and end all. There's no Olam Haba as well, which comes after Olam Hazeh. And therefore, one is not allowed to perform this. Would be an act of excessive mourning in terms of tearing out one's hairs, mutilating one's body as a result of that. But that is an isur which one would get Malkot. Now the Gemara is going to discuss the isur of Yikrachul Karcha is mentioned twice in the Chumash. It's mentioned both in Sefer Vayikra and in Sefer Dvarim. In one place, it's only mentioned regarding Kohanim. Another place is mentioned regarding all of the Israel. So we're going to see different Gezerot Shavot, the way those psukim are learned out together, how we learn the different halachot of that. But that is the first example of that is Hakoreach Kacha Bil Rosho. Right, and as the Rivan adds over here in the commentary, he says Al Hamet. This is if one did it specifically over a mate. Okay. V'mekif be'at Rosho v'mashchit pe'ad skano. So if one is to cut off, to shave essentially the corners, right? The corners of one's head or the corners of one's beard. A peyot, the modern term we talk about peyot, meaning the sides of one's hair. The Gemara is going to go into exactly where and what it's talking about. But if one was to remove those hairs, that also would be an isur lav, and also to destroy the part of one's beard. The 5 corners of the beard, which are on the front of the face, that would be an isur lav. Now over here, I just want to mention the Rambam, because the Rambam has a very interesting explanation for these halachot, right? If you had to guess where in the Rambam he would put these isurim of shaving one's hair and one's beard, in which sefer, we probably wouldn't guess that they are in Hilchot Avodah Zarah. We might if we've already learned it. But so the Rambam in Hilchot Avodah Zarah, which is in Sefer Hamadah, in the 12th Perek. You know what? Let's put it up on the screen. A moment. Okay. There we go. Okay, let us share screen. Okay, you should be able to see it. So you have the Rambam Mechot Avodah Zarah, Perek Yud Bet, first halacha. He says, "En megachin patei alosh, kumo shayu asin of kochavim." It says, by the way, so this is one of those mitzvot. The Torah does not give us a reason, right? You could say that it's a chok. The Rambam here gives a reason. He says we don't shave the corners of cut off, right, the corners of one's hair. This was the practice of the idolatrous. Another place he says the idolatrous priests, but this is the way they would cut their hair, and therefore he says the Torah says don't do it. Okay, we'll get into the details of it too. But that is the Rambam. Now, as you can imagine, this Rambam caused quite a bit of controversy throughout the ages. This is like we have in a number of places. For example, the Rambam by Korbanot, but the Ramban in the opening of Sefer Vayikra quotes the Rambam, where the Rambam says essentially that the reason that Korbanot, that we have a mitzvah of Korbanot, is essentially a concession to the human desire, just as the other nations would bring korbanot in their ways to their gods, so too, therefore Hashem said, no, don't do it like that, bring korbanot to me. It seems to imply that it's not something intrinsic, something inherent, but rather done as a concession, as a response, and the Ramban does not like that explanation, and he really goes on an all-out attack against the Rambam in his commentary. But over here, so you have a similar sort of phenomenon. Here is the Tur. This is the Tur in Yoredea, Hilchot Giluach. Right? This is not in Hilchot Avodat Kochavim, but this is in Hilchot Giluach in terms of. And he says like this. He says, "Hakafat harosh v'ashchatat hazakan, gam be'elu katav Rambam she'asra makatov b'mnei shosim ken avodat kochavim." Right, the Rambam wrote the reason the Torah told us not to do this is because this is what of the Avodah Zarah did. And we should not. The Torah wrote it to distance us from it. Adkan. This is not clear. Says the Torah, right? And this is part of a broader discussion of whether we need to be looking for Tamei mitzvot. We need to be explaining mitzvot or not. He says, "Ki mitzvat melech hem aleinu." You don't need to find a reason for the mitzvot. The reason is because Hashem said so. We have the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, very famously. The Gemara says, "Why do we blow the shofar in Rosh Hashanah?" Right, and then the Gemara says immediately, it says, "Lama tokin rachman lama tiku." What do you mean? Why do we blow the shofar? Because God said so. That's good enough. That's the reason. So says the Toki, well, we're not going to know their reasons. So okay, and he goes on. That is the Tur, right? Who was the son of the Rosh. As I said, this causes a bit of controversy throughout the ages. The Beit Yosef, Rav Yosef Karo, when he writes his commentary to the Tur, he comes and defends the Rambam. Says the Beit Yosef over here. So he quotes the Tur. He says, "Ma shamar Rabbeinu." Rabbeinu over here referring to the Tur. V'zeinom falash ve'enan suchim levakesh mitzvot. He says, "Dvarav mevualim sh'dato lachlok al Rambam." He is clearly here arguing. The Tur is arguing with the Rambam. Lama lo levakesh midato לשום מצווה, שנראה שאילו לא היו יודעים את המצוות, לא היינו מצווים לעשותה. Says the Beit Yosef, why is the Torah arguing against the Rambam? Because he seems to understand, when he says that why did the Rambam have to look for reasons for the mitzvot? So it sounds like he's saying that if we did not have the reason, then we wouldn't have to perform the mitzvah. Right? That's how the Beit Yosef understands the Torah. The Rambam gave us a reason. The Torah says we don't need reasons. The Beit Yosef says, Torah, you're saying you don't need reason because you think that the Rambam is saying if we didn't know the reason, we wouldn't have to perform the mitzvah. But he says, that is incorrect. So that is the continuation of what the Torah is saying. So says the Beit Yosef, Ani Omer, and I say, he says, you can. That is not at all what the Rambam was saying. That is not the way to understand the Rambam. He says, beautiful language, right? Says the Beit Yosef, says, who is more concerned? Who honors the Torah and the mitzvot more than the Rambam? So this is something which appears, we won't look at it inside now, but it appears 3 times in the Rambam, in the Mishneh Torah. It's well known that the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim, which is his work on philosophy, he goes and he has a whole section there about Tamei Mitzvot, and he goes through many, many different mitzvot, explains reasons for them. And the question is, what was the Rambam trying to explain that these are the reasons why we do these mitzvot, or was he just saying in order to help understand? But there is to make it more palatable to people. But that is not actually the reason. So he writes 3 places in Mishnah Torah, the end of Ilchot Tmura, the end of Ilchot Me'ilah, the end of Ilchot Mikvot, that at the end of the day, there are deeper ideas, and we do the mitzvot because Hashem said so. He said, if you have a look closely there, you'll see that the Rambam really holds, since all the laws of the Torah are Gzerot HaMelech, these are all decrees of the king, Mikol Makom, nonetheless, for that which we can understand a reason, we should understand a reason. Rabbi Shimon and that which we don't have a reason, we will apply that, we will blame our shortness of breadth of understanding. But we still have to keep them, just like those which we don't understand the reason, because they are the Gzerot HaMelech. Okay, so that is the Beit Yosef, the way that he understands the Rambam, defending him from the Torah. And then comes the Darkei Moshe, which is the Ramah, and he argues back against the Beit Yosef. He says, Ani omer gam ken, chas lei l'Rabbeinu she'achshot b'ksherim, כמו הרמב"ם נצבע עליו שיסבור, שאם לא היו יודעים טעם מצווה, לא היינו מצווים לעשותו. He says the Darkei Moshe over here. He says, you, the Beit Yosef, you are defending the honor of the Rambam, and therefore you are criticizing the Torah. Says the Darkei Moshe, I am going to defend the honor of the Torah against you, the Beit Yosef. How can you even suggest that the Torah was saying that the Rambam meant to say if we didn't understand the reason that we wouldn't fulfill the mitzvah? No, the Torah never meant to say that. That we've never found any of our sages who would say such a thing. There are those who rejected the Torah, who won't accept anything they can't understand. But certainly that is not the Rambam and that is not the Torah. He says, in other words, says Darkei Moshe, all that the Torah was trying to say is that you, the Rambam, wrote that when the Torah says you cannot mekif be'at alosh, how do we know what it means to mekif be'at alosh? Don't say that it's necessarily just in the way that these idolaters did it. Maybe there's a different way of cutting off the hair, which was not their custom, but that is also included in the Torah, and therefore that is the reason why the Torah is arguing against the Rambam. Okay, but so that is regarding the mitzvah of Hakafat HaRosh, Hakafat HaZakan, a fundamental Rambam that talks about it over there, and then some of the responses throughout the ages. So back into our Mishnah. So we said, Hakarech kacha b'rosho, v'mekif be'at rosho v'mashchit patzkano. Okay, and the last one is hasolet slita achat al hamet. So this is similar to the first. This is similar to the first din in the Mishnah of Korach Kacha is one who pulls out the hair. Soret Srita, one who sort of creates an incision in their flesh. Also as an expression of sorrow, of excessive sorrow, excessive mourning. That would also be, for that one would be Chayav. Okay, so now the Mishnah goes into some of the details and some of the chidushim relating to these levels. So we said, Solet Srita Achat Alamet Chayav. If one would create one wound, I guess, then that would be chayav for that. Salat slita achat al chamisha metim, or chamesh slitot al met echad, chayav al kol achat ve'achat. What if a person did this only once, but once as an expression of sorrow for 5? Right, lo aleinu, the person lost 5 different family members. So over 5 different metim. So it was just one action, but they had kavanah for to do it 5 times, or chamesh slitot al met echad. They did it 5 times, but that was all over one mate. Now, in either of these cases, you might think because there was only one action, or because it was only in response to one thing, that it's all considered one action, and there will only be one set of Makkot. Says the Mishnah, no, chayav al kol achat v'achat. In both of those cases, you would be chayav Makkot five times. Okay, continues the Mishnah. Adalosh shtayim achat mikan ve'achat mikan. Right, when it said hamekif pe'at rosho, that you cannot circle your head, right? That's cutting off the peyot. So it's explained to you there are two, one on each side of the head where the peyot are. Right, shtayim achat mikan ve'achat mikan, one on this side and one on that side. Alazakan, regarding the beard. Right, also over there, it's shtayim mikan, ushtayim mikan, v'achat milamata. So there are five places. Again, we don't know exactly where, in different opinions, exactly where these five corners of the beard are. It's two on the left side of the face and two on the right side of the face, and one below, one lower down. All of them are on the front of the face. This is one of the reasons why some people don't shave, because they might be concerned that we're not sure that we're not sure where it is. Maybe also Kabbalistic reasons. Okay, but as we'll see, all of this relates to shaving. This is going to be with a blade, but it's not going to be with scissors. That would be different. So alazakan shtayim mikan v'shtayim mikan v'achat milamata. Rabbi Eliezer omer im nitlu kulan ke'achat eino chayav ela achat. Okay, so regarding the Peyot HaRosh or Peyot HaZakan, because as we've seen, there are two different Peyot HaRosh and there are five different Peyot HaZakan. So if a person was to, in Nitlu Kulan Ke'achat, says Rabbi Eliezer, you were to remove all of them in one go, with one action, even though they're different places, and the Gemara will discuss how this can be, what case it's talking about. Nitlu Kulan Ke'achat, Eino Chayav Ela Achat. That is only one, it's one lav, and that is only going to be one set of Makkot. Eino chayav ad shitleno b'ta'ar, and it's only going to be chiyuv if you remove them with a ta'ar, meaning with a razor, with a blade. A lot of discussion amongst the modern poskim regarding electric shavers in terms of exactly what is considered the mechanism and how it works, and what is, but the fundamental principle is that when we say an electric shaver functions more like a scissors as opposed to like a blade, and that is why it is permitted. Again, there are differences of opinion whether that applies to all machines, whether only some machines, etc. But he says, that the Yisod Torah is only when it is with a tar. By the way, so there is a machloket, when Rabbi Eliezer says, that with a blade it would be forbidden, but with scissors it would be permitted. So that is clearly talking about the second din we said, which is regarding Peyat HaZakan. Is he also talking about Peyat HaRosh? Right? There are those who say yes, and therefore with Peyat HaRosh, it would be you could cut them off as much as you want, so long as you're using with the scissors. There are others who say no, that this distinction between using a blade or not is not referring to Peyat HaRosh, and Peyat HaRosh could not be cut off at all. Okay. So that is Eino Chayav Shilenu B'Tar. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Afil Lakto B'Melaket or B'Rehitni Chayav. So Rabbi Eliezer says that these are also certain types of that regarding the peyot, certain types of other kinds of blades, which would be forbidden as well. Okay, so that is our Mishnah. So says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan Lo Yikrachu. So here the Gemara is first discussing our first din in the Mishnah we said, which was our koreach karcha. Now, as I mentioned, there are two different parashiot where this is discussed. So maybe it's helpful just to see the parashiot inside. I'll put them up again for you on the screen just to see the context, because it's going to be a little bit confusing to see what the Gemara is talking about without having seen the psukim. So the first one is in Vayikra Kafeh. Vayikra Kaf Aleph. Right, so this is at the beginning of Parshat Emor. Let's put it up on screen again. Right, this is the beginning of Parshat Emor. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe Emor el HaKohanim b'nei Aaron v'amata lehem lenefesh lo yitlamar be'amav. Right, we read this a few weeks ago. This is in Parshat Emor, the beginning of the Parsha. It starts off talking to, as you can see, the Kohanim. Right, so it begins The first few psukim are talking about tumat met, right? Those are the people to whom the Kohen can come into tumat met to come into contact with. And then it says, lo yikrachu korcha b'rosham, upeat skanam lo yigalechu, ubivsaram lo yisratu saratet. So there you can see those are the four dinim which we brought in our Mishnah. They're all brought together in the same pasuk, and that's why they're grouped together. Number one, lo yikrachu korcha b'rosham. Number two, upeat skanam lo yigalechu. Okay, it doesn't here mention here explicitly Patil Rosham, and then it says Ubiv Salam Lo Yisatu Salatet. So that's what we're discussing, and we'll see. The Gemara is going to mention there are certain things that are learned out from the fact that it says Lo Berosham. What is that word Berosham? What is that coming to teach us? But nonetheless, this entire section, as we said, is speaking to the Kohanim. So from these psukim, it's not clear to us that this would apply to all of Am Yisrael as well. On the other hand, we have the psukim in Dvarim Yud Daled, which is, as you can see over here, right? Banim matem l'Hashem Elokechem. This is the pasuk. We have a machloket in the Gemara between. This is in Parashat Ra'eh. We have machloket in the Gemara between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. When the Torah says, Banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem, says you are children to Hashem, does that mean, Rabbi Meir says, Ben kach uben kach nikru banim. No matter what happens, we are called banim and you are treated like banim. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's only when you're acting like banim, only when you're performing Ratzono Shel Makom, you're considered banim. When you are not, so you are not, whatever that means. We say halacha is like Rabbi Meir. But in any event, says the Torah, lo titgodedu v'lo tasimu kocha b'neinechem lamet. Right. So lo titgodedu. Here the Gemara is a drasha that the word titgodedu is related to agudot, meaning that when you have different bundles, that you can't have different. That in one city where you have one beit din, everybody follows the same customs, and we don't differentiate things like that. But the pshat here is that it's referring to mutilating oneself as a result of excessive grief. And again, it says lo tasimu korcha ben einechem lamet. Okay, so notice the difference in the psukim. The psukim in Parashat Emor, it said lo yikrachu korcha berosham. Don't tear out the hair right from your head. Over here in Parashat Ra'eh, it says Lo tasimu korcha bein einechem. It says between your eyes. Okay. It also says here lamet for over somebody who has died, which it does not say in Parashat Emor. And of course, the most important difference is that in Parashat Emor, it's only talking to the Kohanim, whereas here in Parashat Ra'eh, it's talking to everybody. Okay. So with that background in mind, we can go back into the Gemara, and the Gemara says Tanu Rabbanan. We learn in a Braita Lo yikrachu. Yachol afilu kach 4 ו5 krichot lo yechayav el achat. Okay, so we saw our Mishnah actually told us that if a person was right, it said regarding sritot, right? It said hasoret srita, that if you did 5 over one person, or you did 1 over 5 people, that would be 5 different isurim. 5 different sets of Makkot. So here regarding karcha, because it just says lo yikrachu, meaning don't tear out your hair, you might have thought that what? Afilu kirach 4 ו5 krichot, even if you did it in 4 or 5 different places, that's all included as part of lo yikrachu, and therefore there would only be one set of Makkot. Lo yechayav el achat. So Talmud lomar karcha. Why does it add in the word karcha? Lo yikrachu karcha, that word is superfluous, to teach you that if you were to put out there, each karcha that you create would be chayav al kol karcha v'karcha. Okay, so that is the first thing. Secondly, berosham ma Talmud lomar. So the pasuk says lo yikrachu. We understand what karcha, what the revuta is. What is the revuta now when it says berosham, on their head? Ma Talmud lomar. What does that come to add? So again, we're learning from the pasuk from Parashat Emor. So says the Gemara like this. It says Berosham. Why? Because in another place in Parashat Ra'eh it says לפי שנאמר, לא תתגודדו ולא תשימו כוחה בין עיניכם למת. It says over there, between your eyes, right? We know, by the way, that bein einechem, we know this by tefillin, does not necessarily mean bein einechem does not mean on your face, right above your nose, but it means in the place, in terms of the horizontal placement, it means in the center of the head, but it's still above where your hair is. For those of us who have hair, that would be there. So since it says Talmud lomar lefi shneimar lo titgodedu v'lo tzimu kocha bein einechem lamet, yachol, you might have thought lo yeh chayav elav bein ha'einayim, that it's only in the area which is between the eyes. You might have thought that that is the only place where this would be included as the Isur. So minayin rabot kol harosh. How do I know, therefore, that the entire head is included? Talmud lomar b'rosham le'rabot kol harosh. It comes to teach you, that's why it says b'rosham, to tell you that the entire head. So now says the Gemara, but wait a minute, ainli ela b'kohanim. It says Berosham in the Pasuk in Parashat Emor. That's true, but the Pasuk in Parashat Emor is only talking to the Kohanim. It doesn't refer to the rest of Am Yisrael. We're 5 lines from the bottom of the page. Right. So it's true that Parashat Emor is talking is addressed to the Kohanim. Why would you think that the mitzvah of Lo Yikachu Kolcha, we know that this mitzvah applies to the rest of Bnei Israel. The logic of it applies to everybody. But nonetheless, we find that by Kohanim, mitzvot yeterot, we find that regarding Kohanim, there are certain additional mitzvot regarding the service in the Mishkan, or in the Mikdash, additional mitzvot regarding right to who they can marry, and because Kohanim, and all sorts of things. So maybe this, if the parasha is talking to the Kohanim, refers specifically to the Kohanim. So Yisrael minayin. How do I therefore know that it relates to the rest of Bnei Israel? So we learn from Gzera Shava. Ne'emar kan karcha, v'ne'emar la'alan karcha. The same word karcha is used in both of these psukim. Ma la'alan chayav akol karcha v'korcha, v'chayav al rosh kevin ha'einayim. Just as by regarding the Kohanim, we say karcha, we say it comes to teach you that you'd be chayav on each and every one where you pull out the hair, and you'd be chayav for the entire head, just like between the eyes. So afkan chayav akol karcha v'korcha, v'chayav al harosh kevin ha'einayim. So too, that would be the same. That would be the same idea regarding all of the Am Yisrael, all of Bnei Israel. So we learn the Gzera Shava in one direction from the Kohanim to Yisrael. We now learn another halacha din from Yisrael to the Kohanim as well. We say just as malahalan almet, just as in the pasuk in Parashat Ra'eh, it says at the end, it says lo tasimu kocha ben einechem lamet, specifically regarding one who has died. So to afkar almet, so to regarding the Kohanim, that is the isur, that is the chiyuv malkot that is going to be regarding a mate. Okay. So hani dalid v'hei krichot hechidami. In other words, the Gemara just said, learn the din as follows. It said if you were to pull out the hair, you were to do it 4 or 5 times in 4 or 5 different places. On each one, you would get its own set of malkut, would be its own chiyuv malkut. Now, as we know, we've learned many times that in order to receive a punishment from the Torah, in order to get malkut, you need to have hatra'ah. You need to have warning before what you're about to do. So the question is, what precisely is the case? How does this work? On the last line of the page. Right? If you say it's one after the other, i.e. that it was 5 different actions, and it was 5 different hatra'ot, meaning each time before a person is about to literally tear the hair out, right? And you say to them, and there are 2 witnesses, and they come and they say, you know what you're about to do is an isur lav. This is a Torah prohibition. And if you do this, you're going to get malkut. And the person says, yes, I know. And even though nonetheless, I just, I'm so distraught, I'm going to do it. I don't care. And then they put out there. And then the same thing, the process repeats itself. So it's 5 times, it's 5 different actions which a person has done. And in 5, and before each one of those, they received hatra'ah. So And one says pshita. Well, that's obvious. That would be the same by any avera, right? Why do I need to learn it? Why do I need a pasuk to come along and teach me that's the case? That you would have 5 different. Then it says karcha chayav al kol echad v'achad. So over the page, Amud Bet says the Gemara. So maybe it's talking about the following case. Rather, ela b'chada hatra. Maybe there was only one hatra, and the one hatra at the beginning. And then the person did it 5 times. The hatra applies for all 5 of these, all 5 actions that a person took, and then they're going to get Makkot for each one of those. So the question is, would that really be the case? If there's only one hatra, would we say that a person is going to get 5 sets of Makkot? Have we not learned? We've learned in a Mishnah. There's a Mishnah case regarding a Nazir. Nazir shaya shoteh yain kol hayom eino chayav ela achat. A Nazir who is forbidden from drinking wine, right? If he was drinking wine, he could have been drinking wine all day, but nonetheless, he's only going to be chayav once. Amru lo al tishteh v'hu shoteh chayav kol achat v'achat. But if he was, if he was, they said to him, don't drink, meaning each time before drinking, one was given a separate warning, and each time he drank. So then, in that case, he'll be chayav al kol echad v'achat. There, he will have a different set of Makkot for each one. So we see clearly that if there's one hatra, but it's still ongoing, right? The same action, a person repeats it. Nonetheless, it's only one set of Makkot. And if there's hatra before each time, well, that each one is a separate isur, is a separate prohibition, and it's obvious that each one would have its own set of Makkot. So what is the chiddush when the Torah says lo kirchu karcha? That it's even if for 5 kirchot, that would be 5 sets of Makkot. So answers the Gemara. The chiddush is as follows: lo tzricha. No, it was needed only for the following case. Right, lo tzricha desach 5 etzbotav nasha ve'otvinu bevat echat. Right, the case is that a person dipped their 5 fingers in this nasha, which is some sort of a chemical, something which is going to then make remove the hair, and then ve'otvinu bevat echat, and then they placed all 5 fingers on the head in one go. In that case, the havi alei hatza'ah lekol chada v'chada. That is considered as that one hatra they had was for each of those. In other words, in one action, and the person actually managed to create 5 different karchot in 5 different places, and all of this was one hatra. In that case, there would be 5 different sets of Makkot. Okay, so now says the Gemara, ask another question. It says v'kama shiur karcha, meaning what is the minimum measure? We say all of this. The isur is where a person comes along and tears out their hair. How much is it? 1 hair? Is it 2 hairs? Is it what is the minimum measure for which one would be over here would be chayav Makkot? So we have a machloket tanaim in terms of how this works. V'kama shiur karcha. Rav Huna amar kedei sheila'eh me'rosho. Rav Huna says it has to be so that the head will be exposed. You take out the amount of hair that you'll be able to see the place on the head. That would be the minimum shiur. Rabbi Yochanan omer mishum Rabbi Eliezer b'Rabbi Shimon kegris. He says it has to be the size of the size of a gris, which is a certain small piece of grain, which is the word gris. Comes from the word sort of nigras, which means it's been sort of crushed up, but it's a piece of grain. It's probably about the size of maybe like 2 shekel coin, more or less. That is the size. The word gris is familiar to us from Hilchot Nida, where it comes up regarding the minimum size of a ketem, of a stain, which is going to render a woman nida midrabanan. But there he says that is the minimum size over here. So we have Rav Huna who says kedei shira'eh merosho, so that it will be seen from his head. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, that has to be like the size of a bris. And then we have a third opinion, which is really the same as the first opinion. It says Acharim Omrim Kadei Shira'em Merosho, in order that you'll be able to see from your to see from one's head where the hair was removed. Okay, so continues the Gemara, and then it says actually there is a third opinion. It says Amar Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva Pligi ba Tzlata Tanai. Says Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva, this is really a three-way machloket between the Tanaim. Chadomer Gris. There's one who says that it's like the size of a gris. Chadomer Kadei Shira'em Merosho, that you'll be able to see from one's head. Those are the two opinions which we've seen already. The Chadama Ishtei Sarot. Right, and one says, that opinion says, no, once you've taken two hairs is enough. The Ikadamapik Shtei Sarot Umaya Bika Adasha. Okay, and there are those who read, who have the tradition of this Machloket Tanaim slightly differently, that say no, not like two hairs, but they say that it's that remove two hairs, right, from the Braita, Uma'ayo, and insert instead Bika Adasha, like the size of an lentil. V'simanech b'helet keglis u'mechya Bika Adasha. So that is just a way to remember the different what the different opinions are. Okay, the Gemara now, since we're talking about hairs and removing hairs and things like that, the Gemara is now going to go on to another discussion about if a person has different colored hairs and removing them, removing a white hair from the black hairs, etc., whether this is permitted, whether it's going to be permitted on Shabbat. This is not in a case of doing it out of grief or out of mourning. This is just in a sense of grooming. Okay, but we will. I think we'll stop there. It's a new topic, and we'll continue on with that next year. Just I have to apologize. Tomorrow, this was a last minute thing I wasn't aware of. Tomorrow I have an appointment in the morning, so I'm not going to be able to give the shiur. But Wednesday we will be back. We'll be back to normal. So no shiur tomorrow. Shiur is normal on Wednesday.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Very much. Excellent.
Thank you. Very good.